We'll soon be joined by Dr. Adams Oloo. He's an advocate and also head of public law at Daystar University. We'll be looking at the laws around impeachment, particularly as the Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua's impeachment goes to the Senate. Also today, the impeachment of the Kericho Governor, Dr. Eric Mutai, begins. The fate of Kericho Governor Eric Mutai is in the hands of senators, as the upper house is set to either uphold or throw out his impeachment by the county assembly. The Senate will have a special sitting today, when it will have a pre-hearing conference with MCAs who will present their evidence to support the impeachment motion against the embattled governor. Dr. Mutai will then appear before the Senate tomorrow, during which he'll have an opportunity to defend himself against the accusations raised against him. Then the senators will vote to make a decision on whether to uphold or dismiss this impeachment. This is yet another impeachment of a governor. Where? In the Senate. Now, we've seen several other governors who've gone to the Senate. Several accusations before, in cases of impeachment before, gone to the Senate. Senate listens and Senate dismisses, or Senate listens and Senate upholds and therefore goes ahead to impeach a governor. What are the accusations that the Kericho governor is facing? Number one, Eric Mutai was impeached by the county assembly, accused of indecent and unnatural sexual behavior and intimidation and harassment of junior officers. Jesus, man, that's a bad count. A petition submitted by Sigei Ward MCA Kiprotich Regon is 15 pages long. Complainants accuse the governor of unconsented sexual activities, victims reportedly willing to testify in camera to protect their identities. Mutai's actions allegedly violated Chapter 6 of the Constitution. Accusations were framed under the Leadership of and Integrity Act. He did not attend the impeachment session, but was represented by his legal team in the Kericho County Assembly. The Senate will hear the case today and tomorrow. Now, this sets a stage for what then we see on Wednesday when we get into the impeachment of the Deputy President. There have been several cases where the Senate has upheld impeachment. We know of Mike Sonko, Ferdinand Waitito, Kawira Mwangaza. Okay? Former county bosses Martin Wambora of Embu, Paul Chepkonyi of Kericho, Mwangi Wairimu of Muranga, the late Derito Gachagua of Nyeri, Anne Waiguru of Kirinyaga, Mohammed Abdi of Wajir, Granton Samboja of Taita Taveta have also faced impeachment proceedings since inception of devolution. Ambora was the first governor to face impeachment process in 2014, with Embu County Assembly impeaching him twice. The Senate upheld the second impeachment, only for the Court of Appeal to give him in 2015, to save him in 2015, allowing him to complete his first term. He got re-elected for the second term and even became the chairman of the Council of Governors. And he ran the county for 2 terms. Professor Chepkonyi was the Kericho governor. He had been impeached in 2014. He survived after an 11-member special Senate committee cleared all the charges. Mwangi Wairimu was impeached in 2015, but the motion did not pass in the Senate. A similar reprieve for Samboja, who was saved in 2019. The late Derito Gachagua survived an impeachment in September 2016 after senators dismissed all the charges against him. Anne Waiguru, who's currently serving second term in office, had been impeached in 2020 by MCAs, but the Senate cleared her charges. She was later re-elected and served as the chairperson of the Council of Governors. So as we look at all these things, which is among the questions that we'll be having a conversation with Wakili Oloo when he comes here, the Senate can uphold the impeachment. The Senate can actually impeach. But the matter going to court could end up there.
Yes, it can.
And the courts can basically decide this is...
But if you look at what the courts normally deliberate on, it is the process. Not the impeachment. The process that led to the impeachment. Because from everything that I've read and heard, once an impeachment has been pronounced, it has been pronounced. So the courts can't go and say, you know, this impeachment didn't work. But what they can talk about is the process that actually led to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if the team of lawyers, for instance, who are now representing our deputy president, can poke holes in the process sufficient to actually convince the judge, what it then will mean that if the judge is convinced, the government will probably go to the Court of Appeal or whoever it is this one is going to be there for the long haul. It's not going to end with the judge of the High Court. No.
It'll just continue and continue.
It'll continue. This one will go up until, if that's the process, it'll most probably get to the Supreme Court.
But why?
Everything that I hear the Deputy President speaking about amounts to one thing. Why am I the one being picked on?
So it's not whether you don't think he's saying, I am not
guilty.
I'm not guilty.
It would be foolhardy for him to admit any form of guilt if in his mind he has not done anything wrong. But the point is, those who have accused him have also gone a step further and attempted to provide evidence for what it is that they're accusing him. Now, these things have to be disputed and found to fall short of any threshold that somebody may claim to have met.
Yeah.
That's number one.
Yeah.
Number two, we are talking about a Kenyan politician and the Kenyan landscape, okay? Where good business, according to people who are in politics, is doing deals. Doing deals often means ensuring that monies that are intended for development either do not go towards the development, or if they do, they cost many, many times more what they should have cost before. And the excess money, well, where that money goes to is, your guess is as good as mine. Now, if this is how business has been conducted, and it's something that has been accepted, to those who have accepted it, it can't be wrong in their eyes. And why it can't be wrong is because they are not the only ones who are involved in these things. So if indeed you're saying that what they have done is wrong, then why don't we just include everybody who is involved? So the statement is a statement of truth when I say, I am not the only one who is involved in these things. So if indeed what I've done or what you say I have done meets the threshold that requires this impeachment, then I think let's just impeach everybody to whom we can point a similar finger. But that is talking about the entire political class that we have in this country.
That's the unfortunate bit, that the impeachment is a political process.
Yes, it is.
That's the unfortunate bit of it. And the position was upheld by court when they said it's a political process, yes. Because the political process is, people are meeting their own things.
Yes, they are.
There are those who want to remove the deputy president because they think he's arrogant. There are those who want to remove him because they think he was a stumbling block, or whether he was blocking their way into something.
Yes.
There are those who want to remove him because, they feel that he wasn't serving the boss well, or all these things. Yeah. None of which is an accusation that is actually on paper here, right?
No. But they have to craft whatever is on paper to sort of sound that it is something that would warrant an impeachment. Yes.
And in the end, the entire country is now being treated into some funny, dance here. The bottom line is, just like the people many of them who turned up for the public hearings, what they were saying is, we want clarity on UHC.
Yes.
We want clarity on this matter of Adani, JKIA. We want clarity on those matters.
We want clarity on the cost of living.
We want clarity. We want our services.
Yes.
We want services. If you're taking a case to court because you think that this person has actually not performed their job, that is fine. But if you're taking this matter up because you feel that, this guy, I need to, this and the other, that's just wasting public time. And the political class will dance into this. They'll dance into this because it plays two things. It does one good thing, which is it distracts the attention of the country from matters that were there. We move away from, we are not really concentrating on what's working at UHC, what's not, what's working with the rollout of Chief Shah, what's not. Now the thing is about, the Senate. What's the Senate going to do? Where is the deputy president today? Is the president talking? What is Oscar Sudi recording a video? What is Oscar Sudi's latest video saying? What has he said now? This is where now they're trying to focus us. But what really does it matter?
Well, the Wananchi spoke clearly and said what it is that matters to them. Because questions that were being asked, we understand everything you said. How will it change, or how will it affect what we consider to be the fundamental issues that are of concern to us? How will this action change those? It's a question that was asked right across the country.
Yeah.
Yes.
Those are the many questions that we keep asking ourselves.
Yes. But you see, those questions will not stop being asked. And that's why I say that with this particular process of impeachment, our political class they have opened themselves up to things that they will wish they had not done. This process where 208 people have said this guy be impeached,
Yes.
my friend, by the time this thing is, if I may use a Swahili word, chambuad, and looked at in great details and broken down, there are many people who will rue the day when this entire process was began. Yes.
That's indeed true. That's indeed very, very true, you know, on what normally happens and what you see. Our guest has arrived. Some people have seen him being walked into the studio. Dr. Adams Oloo is Dr. Martin. Pole bwana. Nataka kuangusha wewe asubuhi mapema namna hii. Dr. Martin Oloo is an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, and he is a head of public law at Daystar University. Good morning.
Morning, Eric.
How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. And I'm very sorry that I've run late.
What has happened?
I just miscalculated. I don't want to blame anybody else except myself. Because I should have done better calculation.
And then you got caught up in traffic.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, gridlock.
You're caught up in gridlock.
Gridlock, so, yeah.
Where is the gridlock? I'm about to tell people about traffic update. Where did you find it?
This was just before you get into the bypass from the current side. But I think it is that time of the build-up, the big lorries and whatnot. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sure it should be okay now.
Hapana jali. Karibu sana.
Asante.
Siti, give Wakili the day is a proverb.
Yes, our proverbs for this week, last week, and the coming weeks will be from the region that we refer to as the Maghreb region. We listened to proverbs from the Kingdom of Morocco.
Yeah.
This week, we are listening to proverbs from the People's Democratic Republic of Algeria. Algeria has a very interesting history, especially when you look at the relationship that Algeria had with France. Very, very interesting. It was a province of France, and it was believed it was just part of France, not just another country, part of. And there are very many French men, women, families that were essentially Algerians, because essentially they were in France, just the Algerian part of France. But that's a story for another day. Now, the proverbs. Patience is the key to paradise.
Patience is the key to paradise.
Yes.
Great. I mean, they could not be better put. Because patience will earn you what otherwise would be difficult for others. In other words, staying power will actually get you to where you ultimately aspire to get to. So, indeed, paradise is what everyone wants to get to. And the reminder is that it takes patience.
Patience is it. Has
patience.
the key to paradise.
Yeah.
Do you think our political class has patience?
No. Our political class is not aiming to any paradise because they are already in paradise.
As far as they're concerned.
Yeah. They are already in paradise. So how they behave is they have arrived. And they have even forgotten how they arrived, where they are, and therefore they are enjoying their paradise. And everything they do is to enjoy the moment. Yeah.
Why do you think this is so?
It's because we have a build-up and a history that is not founded on any values or any principles, save for convenience and save for personal gain. So, anyone who seeks an elective position in this country is least likely to be doing so because they love you, because they really want the best of you. No. It's because they are aware that proximity and access to power is good for them. And because it's good for them, they maximize it. And they'll tell you that in order for them to continue being there, they must pass laws, they must do things that will apparently appear to be good for you, but actually only good for themselves. So they maximize it. And I'm saying this is not a very peculiar aspect to Africa or to Kenya. It's actually the mainstay of politics. So that even now when you're looking at Trumpism and you're looking at the Republicanism, the heart and the soul of the Republican Party has since disappeared ever since Trump appeared. So that it's no longer about the party, it's about the man and his interests. And he has managed to whip them to his corner. Yeah.
You wouldn't say the same thing for the Democrats?
Again, the Democrats are also a cabal of their own. They have their own establishment, they have their own traditions, and they have their own belief system. Of course, for now, each one of them is seeking dominance, seeking power. And to do that, at least the Democrats are saying they can work with the Republicans. But the Republicans have even abandoned their republicanism to work with Trump. So it's all about what is in it for me? What are my interests? Yeah.
So I hear you to be saying that we are witnessing an entire shift and a change in the politics of the planet.
Absolutely. And if you want to get it better, we are living in the age of disruption. So that the other day when Obama was asking, when did it become normal for these kinds of habits and behavior, or these kinds of statements to just go unchallenged? So we are not living in the normal times. We are now living in the very disruptive times where anything goes.
And why is that so? Because I want to connect this with what's happening in the country. Why is that so?
It's because we have lost the base, or the base has shifted, or circumstances have since become untenable. So, for example, do we have a base in this country that believes in the interests, the values, and the good, and the welfare of this country? Perhaps not. And so when people are voting for somebody because that person is promising them personal benefits or giving them some goodies and so on, they are not interested in the country. They are saying, "Tumalizane hapa." They are telling you, let's just fix what we need now. When you go there, we know you will disappear there. We know you will not care for us. So it's about a zero-sum game. We finish it here. You go do your thing. But as soon as you go there, we start complaining.
So is it something new, or is it the cycle of change that the human being, in whichever status he finds himself in a country, experiences every so often? So we talk of an era.
An era, yes. And you can look at it. There have been different epochs or different eras if you're looking at it from even an African perspective. If you look at our pre-colonial, we had certain structures, we had certain belief systems. When you look at us with the interaction with the colonial, again we have some disruption, but you'll see a movement in Africa, a movement in Kenya that actually is seeking independence and seeking certain values, certain freedoms, and so on. That movement comes in up to the point when our so-called heroes take over. When they take over, they don't look forwards, they look backwards, and they say, "Oh my goodness, this is how the colonialist was enjoying it. We want that, if not better." So that explains to us how our constitution, after being given a constitution by Britain, or after so-called, Lancaster discussions, we have this constitution that's a bit different from how the colonialists ruled. And as soon as Kenyatta comes into power, he's obsessed to change the constitution so that he can be both a governor and a president and a king at the same time. Because his example is the colonial governor. Yeah.
If I mirror what you're saying to Kenya,
yes,
the disruption that often occurs in the history of mankind has to do with the generational changes. Because a generation comes about who did not experience colonialism, did not experience that era of that we had before. And for them, it's history. And they tend to look at life as it is, and they wonder what this fuss, these so-called older people
are fussing about.
Yeah, what are they about when the matters that are before them in their mind are fairly clear? Yeah. And this is what they would expect.
Yes.
So essentially, I hear you to be saying that we're at a time in the history of mankind where whether one likes it or not, change is upon us.
Change is here. And the change is not necessarily good. It's actually very disruptive. Yes. So disruptive that, look at Baba. Baba is now complaining that he has done so much in the past. He has lost friends. Now he doesn't care. He can just do anything now. The point is that is being made is that the young people when they went to the streets and they started agitating, they were not looking at the past, they were not looking at the history. They were saying, we are not satisfied with the now.
Yes.
And we think that the values that we see or the values that we don't see are critical for us. So they're saying, where is accountability and where is where are our parents, where is our government, where are our mentors? And so they were asking that we don't seem to be having mentors. Now, if you ask those people, they cannot tell you anything before Moi or even during Moi. They are looking more at Kibaki, the nearest, and then all they have been seeing is Uhuru and Ruto, and now Ruto. So they have a very short view of Kenya, and they have also lost faith in the so-called founders or the so-called framers of the constitution of the Kenyan nation. And they have lost faith because they cannot see the connection. They cannot see the aspirations. And perhaps they are right, because if this was all about poverty, all about ignorance, disease and education, where are we at? Look at the state of education in this country now. We are it's so chaotic. From university education to primary education to secondary education, we don't even know which is secondary, which is primary, which is... I mean, it cannot be that way. But we are there. We are there.
You're the one who doesn't know, Dr. Those who are in it, they know that they are in primary or in junior secondary, and they know they will go to senior secondary.
So let me ask you, how can this junior secondary be in a primary?
That's you. You see now, you are still old school.
This man is old school. He's stuck with geography.
Yeah.
Till location.
Location is very important. Very important.
Let's take a break. So, there's been this whole conversation about, the process of impeachment, and we were discussing this earlier with City, the political side of it and the legal side of it. So the Deputy President is pursuing the legal side as he also tackles the political side. Members of Parliament were presented with a motion by Mwingi Mutuse, in which he listed a number of issues and accusations. And we're asking ourselves here, were the MPs, when they were standing to speak, were they responding to the motion as presented by Mwingi Mutuse, or are they talking about other things that were not even presented by Mwingi Mutuse in his motion? And if you look at it then, what is the Senate expected to look at? Is the Senate expected to look at strictly the charges that the National Assembly is bringing to the Senate, or will the senators also, because it's also committee of the whole House in the Senate, also are they also going to be looking at matters that are not in the motion?
This is the interesting thing, that impeachment is largely a political process camouflaged in a legal clothing. So that whereas the charges were framed in such a manner as to accord with Article 149 of the Constitution and 150 of the Constitution in terms of the grounds upon which the Deputy President or the President can be impeached, the whole process was political. And I listened to some of good minds, some of my very good friends who were politicking on the floor of the House rather than talking about the charges as framed. And again, the framing of charges in and of themselves are only allegations. What is important is the investigations around it and the wealth of, and the evidence that is behind those allegations and the attempt to prove them. So that you can allege that Eric owns a chopper, he owns a helipad, he owns a hotel, and you can even bring the evidence that he's the owner, CR12. You can bring all those things. That's okay. But what are you prosecuting in order to connect Eric back to those issues? Now, in a normal legal trial, that would be something that could be canvassed in a way that's challengeable, cross-examined, and so on. Now, what we are dealing with here are political allegations that are camouflaged around politics, and the impeachment of Rigathi Gachagua was a political process hatched, politically executed through politics and through betrayal. inside the assembly and so on. To the extent that people who never even appear in parliament on any normal day, that day they were there, very early. So the whipping of it and, all the the canvassing around it was more of a mob lynching than it was even a political process that had any semblance of sanity around it. But the bigger question is, why would the president whip and allow his deputy to be dragged through a process like that? A deputy president a president who, when he was a deputy president, went through a process that never led to impeachment, even though Uhuru had every opportunity to have whipped people to this point. And he himself had promised that never would he allow his deputy to be humiliated in that manner. So it boils down to trust, it boils down to confidence levels, but it also boils down to our playing up politics at the expense of nationhood.
You see, that's the thing. If our constitution places some constitutional thresholds as grounds for impeachment, and then we say that it's going to be a political process, so we are just going to bring in charges so we can just conform to the constitutional requirement. But in the floor of the House, we are going to bring in all other matters that are not necessarily here in the charges. And even if it goes to the Senate, we can do the same. What's the point?
No, that's the point that you asked. You see, why is Senate... I'm smiling because what I'm about to say, it does not apply in our country. But why is the Senate an upper house? Why is the Senate bequeathed with the responsibility of turning itself into a trial court in the case of impeachment? It's because it is meant to be a place where it will, such matters will be executed with care and duty to the law and the Constitution, to the extent that when they arrive at a decision, it should be one that's legally binding as opposed to the politics of it. But you see, if that were to happen, and we want to wait to see whether Senate will behave differently, because definitely MPs were not being fair, they were just being a lynch mob. Senate is expected to turn itself into a trial court and to actually conduct a process that can pass muster, a process that cannot be found wanting in a court of law.
It has handled many impeachment trials, the Senate. Do you have faith that this time it'll handle this impeachment trial as expected of it by the law?
As expected of it, I don't know. I don't think so. But give it to them. There are occasions when they have reasoned, there are occasions when they have done, perhaps made decisions that one would have thought were not coming. In the case of our good friend, the Senator of Meru, twice they were able to say, look, we don't have this. But then the third time they said, look, after all these things, we want to arrive at this. And I think maybe they were right at that point. So we've seen the Senate rise. But that doesn't stop us from imagining that they will not degenerate. They will not also go political. And especially if you imagine that the whipping is here, and the Senate is also the place where the constitutional amendments are also coming from, and there is push and pull, because all these things that are happening are a political chess game. So that when you see where the president is sitting, as he's engaging us, very busy with the Gachagua here, the National Assembly here, the Senate here, the other things are going through. Adani is going through. Asha and Schiff are just floating. This morning I've heard he said that this shift is not going anywhere. Nobody is saying that it's going anywhere. We are simply saying, what value does this whole health insurance scheme give to people? If you're asking me to pay for it, for 2,000 bob for optical, what is that? I mean, even NHIF was better, so why move from what is working to what doesn't work? So basically what we are witnessing is that, and by the way, unfortunately, and we've been here before where we've said things that are coming, unfortunately, President Ruto is entrenching himself to be an ultimate dictator. He wants to be a king, he wants to be a president, and he wants to be a chief. Because having held opposition captive, having held a National Assembly captive, and most likely the Senate captive. We do not have voices that can, come against him. So basically, we are dealing with a problem, and the problem that will come to bite us, because the moment you start lynching a deputy president, what will stop us from lynching the president? And remember, we do not have an IBC in this country as we speak. And we do not have processes that should lead us to some organized transitioning. So we are preparing ourselves for animation. We are preparing ourselves for very, very heated times. And we have actually destroyed trust levels in this country to the extent that nobody is going to trust anybody else when they are being promised that, okay, you will be deputy this, you will be prime minister that.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. You'll be betrayed. And so people are going to go Thomas Hobbes. Thomas Hobbes was an English philosopher, and he said that man in the state of nature does not trust the other man. And that in the state of nature, life is short, nasty, and brutish. Now, when you have a country that refuses to mature 60 years down the line, has a progressive constitution which it wants to cannibalize, does not want to make progress, that country is preparing itself to go back to the state of nature, where life is short, nasty, and brutish, where people, there's a war of all against all. People come with ammunition to a table of discussion. So, because if you can't trust you, look at the kind of distrust now that is in the mountain region. They can't sit on a table and purport and say that they can trust they can trust anybody from where we are sitting. So we are having a situation where we are preparing ourselves for discussions that cannot have an end to themselves, because we cannot trust that what we agree will be implemented.
Will stay in place.
Yeah.
You mentioned the IBC, and that brings in a new angle,
yes,
which even Wakili Waiko Onyoike had penned down in the papers over the weekend, and is saying, look, the process of if the Senate impeaches the deputy president, he shall cease to hold office.
Yes.
That's what the Constitution says. All right? If cases are pending in court, what happens in that during that period? Does he cease to hold office? Can the president go ahead and nominate a new person to be the deputy president? And if he nominates, what's the procedure of actually getting a new deputy president? So take us through that. What does the law say?
Okay. The law gives the path and gives the days. As soon as he's impeached, within 14 days, the president should now nominate the next deputy president, who should be vetted and approved by the National Assembly within 60 days. So that's the Constitution. There's a court process on one end, there's impeachment process on one end. So true, once the Senate says, okay, we agree, Gachagua go home, he can continue his fight, but unlike in the case of a governor, the courts cannot injunct, the courts cannot say stay in office in this case. So he must continue his work.
Why can the courts not say stay in office?
You see, the thing is that where is that provision? Where is that? Because already, by the time, let's agree here.
Okay.
By the time he's impeached, if he's impeached by Senate at 1 minute to midnight,
yes,
or there will be a Gazette notice at exactly midnight,
yes,
which is issuing that
vacancy,
vacancy, and the following morning at 6 a.m. you will see an appointment. Somebody will have been appointed, and the same day, on the same hour, transmission will be in the National Assembly, and the same day the National Assembly will be convening. The Speaker will be convening the National Assembly. Such is our.
But you're saying that there is no legal provision for the courts to halt that process.
You see, the thing is this. We are dealing with a process that's defined in the law. It is saying that the impeachment will happen in the National Assembly and
shall be confirmed
by the Senate. So once the Senate has confirmed it, that process is complete. So what are you injuncting? Who are you injuncting?
It's the same thing that happens in the case of governors, is it not? County Assembly,
yes.
Senate,
yes.
does it.
That's true. We've done that in the case of
Wambora is still served 2 terms.
Yes.
Kawera Mwangaza is still a governor. Is there anything in law that had said that the court can interfere with that process? No. But the courts have...
We are dealing with a very unique situation, and we are dealing with the deputy president. You see, the deputy president, there's a process called a political doctrine, or there's a doctrine called a political doctrine. Matters politics are left to political processes. And in that case, the courts down their tools to not want to be part of the political process. Because what you're dealing with here is not technically a legal process. You're saying that all that the assembly needed to do is raise the numbers, which they have done. All that the Senate needed to do is to raise the numbers which they might have. And once that is done, they've raised numbers this way. Process of the National Assembly is the standing orders. Process on this side is the standing orders. Now, these standing orders are internal to those houses. When you come to court, what are you coming to say? You are coming to clear your name. You are coming to say, I am not guilty of these things. But the political impeachment has happened.
The question is, what then are you taking to court?
Clearing your name on the
So clearing your name,
Yeah.
can you challenge the processes? Because we talked about it earlier on, and I said you can challenge the process in court.
Yeah, but you see what has Parliament done? They will purport, they have said they have used their processes, and we know how has been trying to go to court and hasn't gotten any injunction on the process. It's now going to the Senate. Now, what all the Senate needs to do is to follow its process. And again, once the process is being followed, unless it's being violated, the courts will do nothing about it. They will not come and say, we don't know.
But it doesn't stop whoever it is who feels that they require justice beyond what has been meted out in either the National Assembly or the Senate. It doesn't stop them from going to court to challenge the process.
You see, there are 2 things when you go to court to do. You challenge the process and you challenge the legality of the process.
Yes.
So let's say that Parliament acted legally in looking at what the issues were. Yes, we are saying here that they were more political than they were, but they might even have raised non-issues, but they seem to have had the numbers and they voted, again procedurally.
So what constitutes the legality of the process?
Number 1, did they go through the process as outlined that
In the Constitution.
In the Constitution and also in the standing orders?
Yes.
Number 2, did they afford the public to participate? They went and did their whatever amounted to public participation. Number 3, and you see the problem we have with public participation in this country is that we still don't have a law, so it's either this or that. So it's what you say it is. They even came back with statistics and say the number that said yes and the number that said no. So there is some kind of a semblance of public participation. Number 3, did they afford Gachagua an opportunity to come and defend himself?
They did.
They did. Then did they vote on each of the issues or
They
did. And then they finished that. Now, have they transmitted that decision to the Senate within the timelines?
They have.
Done. So if you go to that process, there's nothing much you'll fault.
But Wakili, all that doesn't matter
Yes.
if what is constitutionally laid out as the threshold has not been met.
Which is, in this case,
On those matters, what the Constitution
No.
says as a threshold.
the Constitution says...
Serious violation, blah, blah, blah,
Yes.
of the Constitution. Blah. Now, how do you measure that?
Now, you see, this is what I'm saying.
Because that's
that-
one of the arguments
Yes.
that the Deputy President is taking to court.
That's true. Now, this is now the question of interpretation. These guys have brought these charges, and these charges have been ventilated upon in the National Assembly and likely to be ventilated upon in the Senate. Now, what they say is a constitutional violation is what they say, not what is. Because then they are saying gross misconduct and they allege what they are alleging.
Yes.
Now, if you ask me from a legal, technical perspective, they did not prove that. But from their own processes, they only needed two-thirds to say this happened. Now, from them, within their process, they have said it happened. Now, whether they are right or wrong is a political question, not a legal question. So that if you were prosecuting this in a constitutional petition, it would be a very different ball game. What's the threshold and what? But for them, they are saying if 2/3 agree that this is right, then they have met their threshold.
2/3 and it has been met.
So it's not a very tidy place to go to. But remember this: people can be impeached and still go on in office.
Yes.
Like in the case of
Martin
Ombora, or even in the case of Trump. Trump was impeached how many times, or even Bill Clinton was impeached how many times.
But you see, this is the point.
Theirs was not confirmed in the Senate, remember?
That's the point.
But someone's impeachment is confirmed and they're still in office, and yet you say the process is complete. So essentially, our process is incomplete.
In the case of governor, I think we have it. The process is clear.
And that's what I'm seeking to understand. When you say that is different from the deputy president, I don't understand. How is it different?
You see, we have not said in the Constitution, we have not given the courts the power to intervene or the power to interpret in the case of the president or the deputy president. Because we have said these are people's appointees, or these are people who are elected by...
How is that different from governor?
How is it different from a member of parliament?
A member of parliament...
Let's even go to governor.
Governor...
How is it? Which part of the law distinguishes how you impeach a president from how you impeach the governor in terms of the courts coming in?
The point about the governor is about, again, process. Now you go back to the county assembly. Did they? And if you realize, a lot of times, whether the Senate upheld the impeachment or not, it was whether the county assembly had followed its process and had completed the legalities and met the thresholds. So where the county assembly did not get it, the impeachment in the Senate was overturned
by the courts.
By the courts.
Yes.
So this time round, if you remember, twice.
So same thing can happen.
Can happen
in the courts with regards to the process in the National Assembly.
And that's why the National Assembly was busy trying to fix and to cure all and any possible loopholes that could have been used to impeach their decision, by carrying out all those processes, going to the people, and so on. So at least they can say they have done their bit. Now, Senate can actually call into question that and can say, we are not satisfied. Because now Senate is converting itself into a court. It's a trial court. It's a high court status at that point.
It's going to be an interesting couple of days. We'll invite you to come so we can look at it as it's Dr. Martin Oloo is advocate, head of public law at Daystar University. He's been our guest.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.